Hey, Sooner Nation. Welcome back to another Champion Standard podcast. Our last podcast of being in the Big 12. Turn the page next week, and we will be SEC bound and officially in the league. So I know there's a lot of, I guess they call them activities or festivities on Monday that the university's doing to join the conference. We actually have what's the guy from ESPN coming in and doing his show for a couple hours?
Feinbaum's going to be on campus.
Yeah, he usually gets on my nerves, but I'm going to have to give him a pass next Monday, I guess. He's going to be a part of, we're going to have to actually listen to him, and hopefully he's got some good stuff to say about us at some point during the season. So, well, we got another special guest this week, Chris Mason from Sooners 360. Is that right, Chris?
That's correct.
He's going to cover a little recruiting today. It seems to be recruiting's a 365-day job anymore for you, Chris, and the coaching staff and everyone else. It just seems to be nonstop. So, yeah, we're excited to get into recruiting a little bit. I know we had, a commitment yesterday. We can talk about that, or, upcoming potential commitments and things like that. So I'm your co-host, Brad, and I'm always joined by Rob, of course. And we got a three-headed monster today, but Chris is the recruiting expert, so we'll lean on him for most of that. So thanks again, Chris. I appreciate you joining us.
No problem. You're just going to have to shut me up when it comes to recruiting. So
we want you to read a lit, man.
No. I can just talk your ear off all day. So
yeah. What do we want to talk about? Our most recent commit, or?
Sure. I mean, I think of the most recent commits, I think he's probably the one he's obviously the biggest commit. I think both figuratively and literally. You add an offensive guard to the recruiting class. OU only had 2 offensive linemen in the class to date. So he was the only interior offensive lineman who visited in June during the big recruiting weekends. He visited on June 8th before the 2 big weekends they had following up that. He wasn't at the Barbecue U weekend. He was in 2 weeks before. He was OU. Again, they weren't bringing in any other guards, so this was pretty much a Afalava or nothing or bust.
Yeah.
Right. They'd have to basically, and July's mostly a dead period, so it's not like if they lost out on Afalava, they could go back out on the road, make some offers, and scout some guys. They obviously could make some phone calls and offer some kids and try and set up some visits for September, because they can't do official visits again until September. Their first home game.
Yeah.
So this was a big win because it was a big gamble. Going to Utah and winning a poly offensive lineman is not something OU's routinely had a lot of success at.
Mm-hmm.
The last offensive lineman who signed with OU from Utah was Kenyon Friesen back in 2014. Who didn't turn out to be anything, was very talented, but just flamed out off the field.
Mm-hmm.
So, you watch him on film. He is a monstrous looking 6'5", 320 kind of kid. He's every bit that size. He plays guard and tackle for his high school, Utah, Skyline, Utah. You can just see him he's burying that guy right over there.
Yeah,
he creates a hole there. He pulls. When he's pulling, it's this massive freight train going this way. This poor guy is going to get pancaked at the end of the play.
Mm-hmm.
A nice pin there, 3-second pin. But he also looks good run blocking. He's very athletic for his size. He's probably, as you see, he's playing guard here. But when you see some of the he's so heavy with his first hit, he just knocks guys on the ground. And then he knocks him down on the ground again. So you see he's playing tackle here, and he pulls. He's just flattening that guy. He's back at guard there. So they move him around a little bit, but you can tell in some of the pass pro sets that you see that he's very athletic. He's not letting anyone near the quarterback. On the goal line, he's basically shoving the guy into the end zone. There's a play coming up where you'll see him. he shoves the guy like 5 yards. He's on the 6-yard line, and he shoves him 5 yards into the end, all the way into the end zone, and clearing away from the back. So you see, he's in a pro set here. That's very mobile. He's got quick feet for a big guy. I mean, he's not those are smaller guys, and you see, he just kind of pile drives that guy at the end just to put the point across. So I think when you're talking adding him to OU's guard mix, if you think about Eddie Pierre-Louis, Eugene Brooks, and I'm not sure if Daniel Ep10 is going to stay at guard or not. I think there's a chance he could move to tackle. We'll just see how he develops. That's a strong group of offensive guards right there.
Absolutely.
They've got with Wei Wu and Hatchett and Ozetta, they probably have a year. They probably can, have a year to develop. But when you think about, I know everyone's all focused on the tackle side of this, but if you think about that, Wei Wu, Garrett, Ozetta, Eddie Pierre-Louis, Brooks, Iasosa, and maybe Ep10, and now you add Hollenbeck, the other verbal in this class at center, who's huge, and he needs to probably lose some weight, but he's a big guy too. He's a power lifter. He's like 6'4", 340, I think. But this guy, he's going to struggle to probably stay at around 6'5", 320, 330 under Schmitty and the OU training table. He's just a knack. I mean, I think he's 320 right about now, something like that. And he doesn't have a lot of bad weight. He doesn't look, sometimes, you see a young, a high school offensive lineman, you're like, okay, there's like 30 pounds of bad weight that's got to be lost there.
Baby weight.
Baby weight. Yeah. He has some of that, but he's just carrying that weight, so well. So this is, when you think about this, he's a 4-star top 250 by one of the recruiting services. The other ones have him as a high 3-star. When I watch a lot of prospect film, to me, just like last year, I couldn't quite understand how someone could look at Eddie Pierre-Louis' film and think he was the 63rd interior offensive lineman in the country. Wow. That's what On3 had him as. While rivals had him basically 5-star territory. I don't understand how you're watching this
disparity there.
Yeah, I mean, you watch Eddie Pierre-Louis' film, and he's just burying people. You watch this, and you think of him, and maybe or Brooks teaming up with Eugene Brooks, who had great film and dominated 5-star defensive lineman at the Under Armour game last year. Brooks was just Brooks gave Dominic McKinley all he wanted, and just didn't pancake him left and right, just out of it's an all-star game. I'm not gonna pancake you at an all-star game. But you think of this guy added to that mix, and the interior offensive line looks to be in very good shape for the future. And you love adding a poly guy to the mix.
Absolutely.
They have been, it's the NFL is it's just a fact. The NFL is littered with poly interior offense tackles and guards. I mean,
tackles,
last year, one of the better offensive linemen in the Big 12 was BYU's offensive lineman Kingsley. I'm going to butcher his last name, Sumataya.
Yeah.
Sumataya. He was, he's one of the better guys. And, obviously,
he went to my Chiefs.
Yeah, he did. And obviously, Penei Sewell, who I think is with Detroit, is probably in the, in that top 10 tackles in the NFL kind of discussion.
You got the left tackle for the Eagles, Jordan Mailata, right?
Yeah, he's technically I think he is either Australian or from New Zealand. So,
okay.
So he's a Maori, I think.
Okay.
I'm originally from England, so rugby's a side sport I know something about. So obviously, I've watched New Zealand. I've watched New Zealand play and smash England and Wales on a number of. It's nice. I used to live in Wales. I can now talk about Wales due to Welcome to Wrexham, and people actually know what country I'm talking about. But rugby's the sport of Wales, not soccer. But yeah, you're right. He's from either Australia or New Zealand. And
now that you say that, I think he is New Zealand. I think he's New Zealand, but he was one of those guys that played rugby.
Yep.
And the Eagles offensive line coach name escapes me, but really developed him into one of those great players. But there's a lot of untapped players out there like this kid. My gosh, I mean, just watching how
You see how
powerful
quick
he
he is and how quick
He's
he is
powerful,
at
quick.
tackle.
When it comes to O-line recruiting, I really don't worry about it, man. Like, Bo's evaluations the last several years have just been spot on, and I'm assuming we were talking a lot about the physical traits here, but I would assume the mental attributes, the toughness, the willing to come in and work, those that blue collar, grab your pail, we're gonna go work today. Bo finds those kids. I do you have any insight on that? Like on his like mental makeup? I mean, I can see it on the field here. He's burying people like every play he's got. But
sometimes you can just tell when recruits have bought into Brent's holistic approach, and I'll call it a holistic approach. Like we want to make you we want to make you a great football player. We want to make you we want you to graduate. We want you to have a degree. We want you to have a plan outside of football. We also realize you're an 18-year-old, young man, and we want you to graduate being a much more experienced 23-year-old man, right? I mean, I think if you ask Brent, this whole NIL stuff is, he's playing the game, but that's not what he would really rather do. He'd really rather focus. I mean, I think OU got caught a little bit. I think Brent would have had even more recruiting success if NIL wasn't around right now, because I think his message just really, it appeals to kids, it appeals to parents. But yeah, I think, when you see Darius, I mean, he's obviously an aggressive offensive lineman, right? I mean, you can just tell he's burying guys. You can't see what the smile behind his face mask, but it's probably there. So I have no idea. And the nice thing is, Bill can't really put on like an air of being somebody else. He's just, sometimes it costs some kids, right? He just, look, I'm going to work you hard, but I really care about you. But, if you want to go somewhere where someone's going to coddle or babysit you, I think Bill's very clear, like, this ain't the place for that. So
I don't know any offensive line coach that's successful that coddles his players. Like that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, but I think Bill is more, but I think, I think some guys are perhaps a little more like, well, the guy changed it. You always hear the story. Well, the guy who recruited me isn't the guy who's coaching me.
Sure.
Right? That's a frequent story. I don't think that's the case with Bill. I think Bill is very much like, look, this is who I am. This is what you see is what you get. And if you are on board with that, great. If you're not, let's just move on. That's why, on a slightly different topic, that's why the summer camps that just occurred where OU offered about 13 offensive linemen between 26 and 27 was so great, because all of those high school kids, Bill got to coach for a session. So you got to see all those 26 kids getting offers. And they knew they're kind of getting a preview of what Bill's really, Bill gets to coach them, sees how coachable they are, and they get to understand, okay, Bill's not messing around. When he says, I'm going to coach you up, there's very little chance that, you're, they're getting a preview of Bill, and Bill's also getting a preview of them, right? Like, how do they take to my coaching? Are they coachable in a 2-hour session? Can I teach them something? Can they pick it up?
I heard a comparison for Darius. I don't know where I saw it, but somebody said he was a Cody Ford that was a little more fluid at his age.
That's an interesting comp. He's a little bigger. It's a little taller than Cody. You want to lean just for any number of reasons to say, well, he's a little bit like Drew Samia, but Drew wasn't this big. Drew in high school was 6'4", 275.
Yeah. Yep. He was
and Drew struggled to get over 300 and maintain 300 pounds when he was at OU. If he hits the weight right and everything works out right, Darius is going to be 6'5", 330 at guard.
Man, that's a good guard sign.
He just carries it. He carries his weight so well. He just does.
Yeah.
I think Marquise Hayes was a comp I was perhaps floating around a little bit because of how mobile and powerful he is inside. And again, and the nice thing is, unlike Marquise, Darius is going to get Schmitty for all 4 years.
Yep. That's a good point.
He's going to get, he's going to get that training for all 4 years. The only thing I don't know and haven't been able to find out is if Darius is considering enrolling early. This year, OU got very lucky that 4 of the 5 offensive line commits enrolled in January and sort of fast, kind of got a jump start on their careers. And for a couple of those guys, I think that was invaluable because they need a little time to percolate and develop. But, the buzz back is still very positive, especially on Autry. And although I think he's going by Autry Dent now. Autry Dent and Iasoso were the 2 sort of underrated guys. And they both came in early, and I'm getting my sources are saying that they're developing well, that enrolling early has really paid off for them. So that's the only thing I don't know about Darius. So if he enrolls in June with some of the guard depth OU has, I think a redshirt season, might be in the mix. If he does enroll early, I think somewhere battling in the guard 2 deep, depending upon where OU needs to shuffle their folks, could be possible. I mean, I think there's a outside chance that that Weiwu could, if he has like a fantastic season, could be a draft pick. It could decide to hit the draft if he has an old SEC type season at guard, which seems like a kind of a wild projection, but. Based
I don't know, man. Weiwu looks real good, man. But the SEC, it's a lot more competition there for the all SEC. I think you're right. It's probably a long shot, but
if he's buried,
you could have a huge turnover after this coming year. There's gonna be lots of spots open, and Beatonbow will shuffle guys around.
What if he moves after he moves Akin Kimmy to tackle? He's able to move Akin Kimmy to tackle, maybe. That opens up a spot inside, so you could find Darius could easily find himself, depending upon how things shuffle out, somewhere in the 2 deep at one of the guard spots.
Yeah. Is Ryan Fauji a guard? Do I have him listed wrong on my depth chart?
Ryan Fauji is a tackle. Ryan Fauji is a tackle.
Okay.
Yeah, he's a tackle.
He's 6'6". He's 6'6", 295. I mean, I guess. Again, I've heard of somebody told me that they think he's enrolling early. So, Bill could try him at guard just to get him acclimated. Bill kind of does that a little bit for true freshmen sometimes. So, but his long-term potential in the future is definitely at one of the tackle spots.
Yeah. What a great find for Beatonbow. My goodness. I think it was.
He went at the camp. To speak about the camp last year, really the guy everyone was looking at was his teammate. Yonte Newman, who's now who's an A&M verbal, and OU didn't push for him because he's a guard, not a tackle, and they need OU needs them. OU needs tackles in this class more than they need several guards. So that was
fine, man.
Well, that's what. So at that camp, everyone's looking at Newman, and then all of a sudden, once they see Fauji out, they're like, "Whoa, who's Newman's teammate?" Because he's longer, got a longer wingspan.
Yep.
Newman's 6'3", 6'4", and Fauji is 6'5", 6'6", and on his social media action, he was saying that he's 295, and if he's 295, he carries that incredibly well. He looks like a power forward more than an offensive tackle.
Yeah, so, I was gonna say, he looks like a basketball player. Does he play basketball? Does he play basketball? No. Okay.
The only of the offensive tackles, the only guy I clearly know that plays basketball is Lamont Rogers, and Lamont looks pretty good. And Lamont looks pretty good at center. He does a good job posting people up and scoring. So, that's kind of the mix there. Hollenbeck, I would imagine, is probably going to enroll early because he's been in the OU class for so long. I would guess that's probably what he will do. So, yeah, those 3 players that's a good class, but OU, Bill's. I worry more about the numbers than who Bill's getting, actually, right? If he signs 5 guys, I'm happy, right? When he's only getting 3 or 4, I'm like, we need more numbers than that just because of the weird attrition that just kind of occurs. Some guy doesn't pan out. Some guy bolts to Missouri in the middle of the day before practice. You need to sign 5 offensive linemen every class. So we're at 3, and they've got 3 offensive tackles left. I don't think anybody really. It's hard to project OU being in the Ty Haywood picture right now. Of course, if Ty pushes his commitment out until August, OU, in theory, could get him back at the end of July when the open window, when things open back up and you can visit campus again. But you can't do an official unless the rules have changed. OU can't do an official visit that weekend. They couldn't do one last year for Casey Poe, and that really hurt OU because OU was. Bama went in with the blitz, and OU's like, all right, no problem. We'll get Casey in at the end of July, get our pitch in, and then he'll make a decision in August, and we'll have a way to push that off. And then OU found out, the NCAA said, oh no, you can't use that. You can't use that last period in July for official visits. So OU had to push up Casey Poe's official visit to a midweek thing. So we missed the barbecue U, and Bama just with the momentum from there,
And so Bama's knocking on the door for Ty Haywood as well. Is that right?
They are. That's what appears. Okay. If he doesn't get, I don't think he's going to FSU, and I don't think anybody else is really involved. Although Ty doesn't really give interviews, as witnessed by the fact that none of the OU recruiting sites have been able to get Ty in an interview to say, "Hey, you missed OU. Are you going to visit OU at the end of July? Are you going to come to an OU home game in September? When are you making a decision?" Because he listed OU in his final 3, so it was like, I mean, he could have just
what's the give there?
You
could have just listed the 3. Like, what's going on? Like,
what's going on? You didn't. Obviously had a true family situation, but he didn't reschedule. He didn't swap out FSU for OU, so it seems like OU is out, but. In recruiting, you never really know. So if he comes back and says, no, I'm going to go, because he's in Denton. So OU's having a big event in July I think it's called Stars at the Palace. Mm-hmm. And it's really focused for 26 and 27 kids mainly. This is last year. This is where Kamori Moore committed.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
He committed at the event last year. So, and Kevin Sperry was there, and all the Carl Albert kids were there.
Awesome.
And really all the momentum that 26 recruiting established so early. Because if you recall, I don't have the date in my mind, but I'm pretty sure Marcus James and Trenae Washington committed like in September of last year. So that 26 event's going on. So all the staff will be around. So if Ty Haywood wants to drive up before he makes a decision and visit with OU, bring his whole family up, OU can cobble together an unofficial visit that will give them a chance to at least make another pitch in person.
Make some ground and
make some ground up. But if he decides, in 2 weeks, he's obviously going to Alabama. And he still may go to Alabama after all this is said. But again, they're obviously, big, they're the big recruiting websites. But when On3, 247, and Rivals can't get Ty Haywood on the phone to just say, Are you going to visit OU before you make a decision? They can't get him on the phone to say that, or text him or get an answer from him. He doesn't post anything really on social media. Neither he and Andrew Babalola are like ghosts on social media, whereas Fasusi and Lamont are a little. Lamont's actually kind of a ghost too. Fasusi of the 4 tackles is really the only one that is sort of like active on social media. Posts and stuff.
I've seen him interact with people on social media. Interact,
but the other 3 don't.
No,
they don't. So that kind of leaves a bit of mystery. But that's where O-line recruiting is. You've got Lamont Rogers, who all credit to Brandon Drummond, OU Insider. He seems to be indicating Lamont might be making a decision soon. Mm-hmm. I don't think anybody has a time frame for Fasusi, Babalola, or Ty Haywood, and Haywood could just like post tomorrow, "Hey, I'm going to Bama," and be like, "Oh, okay."
Right.
I'm not really familiar with Lamont Rogers. Can you talk a little bit more about him? Because Fasusi, I do, just because some of the people on X will talk.
Right.
It's kind of an Oklahoma Texas battle, but that I at least that's what was on X. I see a lot of different stuff, but Lamont, Where is he at, and who's his top 2 or 3?
So Lamont is so Haywood and Fasusi are the top 30 guys. They're the 5-star guys along with Babalola.
Okay.
Lamont is only like the number 65 player in the nation, right? So,
Okay.
And if
Only.
in any year we'd be like, oh my God, that's so fantastic.
Only.
Right.
But he's the 3rd guy. He's the 4th guy. He's 6'7", 315, 320. He's super athletic. He buries when he sets the edge, he's just burying guys. He's probably based upon film and all the stuff and chatter going around, Fasusi is probably the most college ready.
Okay.
Haywood might be next.
Okay.
Babalola and might be next, and then Rogers is right behind. But
okay.
Rogers,
heck of an O-line class this year. The O-line classes are not you usually don't have that many O-line that are just really good. I mean,
and there's actually there's actually 3 or 4 guys in the mix that OU's not recruiting. There's a guy called David Sanders from Charlotte, North Carolina, who's actually the number 1 tackle in the country. It's an O-line. It's the best O-line class in like a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's awesome.
Rogers is a little bit outside of that group, but when you watch him play basketball as well, so imagine Orlando Brown, except way more athletic.
Oh, damn.
That's like the ceiling for him. I mean, he's wingspan and size and mobility for his size are all off the charts. He's just not as he's fantastic, but he's probably, if he's truly going to, and again, this isn't my information. This is coming from an OU Insider podcast that Brandon Drum appears to be, seems to be in contact with Lamont Rogers, which is always a good sign when OU guys are in contact when recruits are contacting them. That was always a tip off in the past when I was following recruiting. If he follows, it looks like it's probably an OU and Missouri battle. Maybe A&M's trying to get in there because A&M's not involved with Ty Haywood, and A&M is really trailing far behind with Fasusi. So this is really, A&M is probably not getting one of these elite guys. They're just not. That's what it looks like right now. Although things can change because, they've changed staff and, just some. I mean, you look at this guy, he's not.
Wow.
Yeah, you see how big he is. I mean, he's
road grader. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he's, so he's a little raw, I'm sure, some of the folks spoken in, but look how mobile that guy is.
Yeah. Oh, look, he took 2 guys out with that one.
He likes to go to the ground.
Yeah, but do you see how quick? But do you see how quick he was for that size?
Yeah. I
mean, look how quick that is, him getting to the second level.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's a little raw there, but he's definitely got.
I mean, you give Bill this
canvas there that you could,
and he's enrolling early. He's enrolling early.
Oh, okay.
He's talked about that. So, I mean, you give Bill this. I mean, look at him.
Wow.
I mean, look at him fly out there. He's just, I mean, they're running away from him. Basically, those guys were running away from him.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'd like to see these linebacker and safety's eyes when they see him coming.
Yeah, you just buried that other guy. I mean, he's very quick for his size. When you just talk measurables, and you just talk about that measurable skill set, and you're like, okay, he's enrolling early. What Schmitty and Bill could turn this guy into is, I don't think he's quite. He's obviously bigger framed than Tyler Guyton was at the same stage. If you go back and look at Tyler Guyton's defensive tackle footage, his senior year of high school, first off, you're like, why in the world wasn't everybody recruiting him? Like, he's huge, he's athletic. How did he slip through the cracks? And it was a little bit of a COVID. It was COVID probably that caused that. But, I mean, this is Orlando Brown with better athleticism or a slightly thicker, better put together Tyler Guyton. I mean, he will be 6'7", 325, 330 once Schmitty's done with him after a couple of years. I mean, his athleticism. Yeah. I mean, you watch it in the hoop game. I mean, he's spinning in the post, laying the ball up. I mean, he's a fantastic athlete. So, with everything going on with NIL, some of the old school recruiting things that I used to better use as like tip-offs on guys have sort of they become less reliable, right? Because guys will be like NIL deal at the last minute and then just change directions, and you're like, well,
Sure.
what the hell happened? But
Yeah,
Lamont's been to OU a number of times, and the biggest thing I always felt like that was a huge tip-off that Lamont really liked OU, was really interested in OU, is last fall he drove up for the TCU game on Black Friday. Which is a noon kickoff, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We remember that terrible
on
noon
Thanksgiving
kick on Black Friday after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And he was dedicated and wanted to see OU play enough that he got in his car from Mesquite to Texas, which is South Dallas. Southeast Dallas, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. If I have my directions right. 2-3 hour drive, right? So he was probably up at like 7:30 in the morning to get ready to go to Norman for the game. I can't tell you as a 16-year-old, I was ready to do, 17-year-old, I was dedicated enough on the day after Thanksgiving to get up at 7:30 to do anything, let alone drive several hours for a football game. And it's a boring football game too. It's TCU OU. I mean, TCU was terrible. There wasn't it wasn't like it was Oklahoma State.
No.
Or it was Kansas State and the Big 12 championship was on the line. There was not really a whole lot of drama about this football game. And other than the OU defense fell asleep in the third quarter, that game was a blowout. So the fact he came up for that kind of told me, And his mom, OU reorganized his visit so that he could come up midweek so his mom could participate. He went to FSU after his OU visit. He was not at the Barbecue U. He had a midweek visit in between. And he was the only guy on campus. And his mom was with him. And OU moved it to make sure his mom was part of the experience. And she's in the photo. She's in the photos, having a good time, So I think OU. I think Lamont really wants to be coached by Bill. When he has talked on record about Bill, it's very reverential. It's very much. This is why the Fasusi thing has become so interesting, because Fasusi did on social media post a photo of him and Bill, and he posted the GOAT. He's referring to Bill as the GOAT. Mm-hmm. So that, Texas fans freaked out when they saw that. But I think Lamont, or maybe the people
freak out some Texas fans. That's a good day.
It is. They had a bad day yesterday. Texas had a really bad day yesterday. They lost 2 elite defensive linemen, one to Oregon, one to FSU, 2 guys they were banking on getting. It was a tough day to be. Tough day. I hate it, but I love it. But Lamont is, I think it's down to Oklahoma, Missouri. And I think if Lamont does, I think Lamont and his supporting folks are like, well, where do you really want to go? If you choose first, with everybody else still deciding, you have your choice, right? And you have your, we'll get the NIL package will be exactly what it's been portrayed as, because if you go first, you get your choice, right? So I think maybe people around Lamont have decided, and Lamont said, well, I want to be coached by Bill. And I think the folks around him are like, well, there's every chance that Bill will turn, Lamont Rogers with his skill set into a first or second day draft pick. That's his, barring every, can't always tell with everything going on, but his skill set, you can just look at his skill set and you look at the guys Bill has previously had like that. I mean, Orlando was incredibly raw. I mean,
oh yeah.
I mean,
6'8", 300. Well, he was overweight. He was
like 360.
Yeah, 67. I mean, he was a big kid. He had to put in the work, but that was a match between personality of player and coach, and the trust, and do what I say, and I'm going to get you there, and put the trust in Bill. And then now he's, making tens of millions of dollars in the NFL and winning Super Bowls. So,
yeah, I mean, he's going to have 4 NFL contracts by the time he retires, and
he's definitely getting one more. I mean, he's signed one with the Bengals, but he's going to end up.
That was his third, right? His third. Yeah, because he had a Ravens one, and then he's had a Chiefs one, and now he's got a Bengals one. So,
yeah, he'll end up doing a fourth one here pretty quick, based on his contract now. So,
so that's
good money, man.
It is. So I think
good for him.
if Lamont does decide in the next sort of 10 days, which is what Brandon said he thought might happen, I like OU's chances to get Lamont Rogers. And then you've got Foji and Rogers at tackle. That would give you 4 offensive linemen, and OU would just have to sort of decide where they go next, or see if they can perhaps convince one of the other tackles that they have offers out to join, and they join that group. So that might be a tough pitch, but if OU has the NIL money for multiple tackles, and I don't have any reason to presume that they don't. They had money for multiple 5-star defensive linemen last year.
Yep.
I don't see why you wouldn't have the money for multiple 5-star tackles this year.
Yep.
So that's where the offensive line line recruiting is right now. Again,
looking good.
The only other story that's out there is Fasusi had a fantastic visit to OU. Daniel Ekin-Kimmy, Daniel UK as I call him. I had a chance to talk to Daniel last fall before his OU visit. And Daniel's just a great kid, just a fantastic kid. His YouTube channel's great. He does a good job. If you want to see like an actual recruit experience, go find Daniel Ekin-Kimmy on YouTube and watch his OU visit, because he had never been to Norman before, and it was only his second trip to America. So it starts at Heathrow in London. He goes to Atlanta and then Oklahoma City, and he walks you through it's as much of an intimate experience of what an official visit looks like as a kid is really allowed to sort of do. So, but Daniel hosted at Fasusi. Daniel's grandmother is of Nigerian descent. Michael Fasusi's family is, I'm not sure if Michael's a first 1.5 generation, first generation, I'm not sure about the experience, his experience, but obviously Michael's family is Nigerian. So Daniel and OU put out a fantastic visit. Bill did as well. And I think Texas thought they were in the lead with Fasusi before the OU visit. The OU visit OU knocked that visit out of the park. And Michael's been to OU a number of times prior. I mean, Bill's had these guys, Rogers and Fasusi on campus more than anybody else. Yeah. So Fasusi, at some point, everyone thought in January, everyone thought Fasusi was going to OU. Then everyone's like, he's going to Texas. But OU blew the visit out of the water. And then he went then he had a Texas visit, and the Texas visit it's good, but he wasn't anywhere near as raving about the visit as much as the OU visit. So Texas fans, and even the Texas, whenever a Texas site starts indicating that maybe OU has a shot at somebody that they previously said was going to Texas, you know that they're in a panic stage, because Texas sites, recruiting sites, never want to say OU's getting anybody, right? Sure. No. I mean, they'll deliberately leave when a kid says he's going, OU's one of his top 5. The Texas guys will write an article and only be 4 schools listed. They'll leave OU off just on purpose out of habit.
Right.
So for those guys previously say, no, Fasusi's going to be a Longhorn, to now say, well, it's a battle with OU. That tells you quite a bit about the situation. And and Fasusi, in the interviews he's given, and again, like I said, Fasusi's the most talkative, provides the most interviews, provides kind of the most quotes. And Fasusi's talked to Colin Kennedy at 247, gave Brandon Drum an interview at OU Insider, and gave Josh McCuistion on Sooner Scoop an interview as well. And he's just, he's talking about Bill left and right, like Bill's the guy I trust to develop me, and going on and on about that. So if you were OU and you had a chance to maybe stretch what you're doing NIL-wise to deny Texas their only chance at a 5-star offensive tackle in this class, not only do you need an offensive tackle, but if I was strategically OU, I would be like, we'll match whatever Texas does. Make sure you call us. Because Texas doesn't have a shot at Ty Haywood. They don't have a shot at Andrew Babalola. And they're not going to get Lamont Rogers. So this is the one guy, and they've loaded up their offensive line class. They've got some good numbers. They got the Coleman twins from DFW. And they've got a couple of, and they've got a couple other guys who, I'll be honest, I've never heard of. I've not watched film on them because OU wasn't looking at them. They got a couple of 3-stars, but their O-line class is not exactly glittered with super blue chips.
They're looking for something to hang their hat on the wall. They're looking their
Yeah.
ace in the we won this, and this is our guy.
And Fasusi's the guy.
Yeah.
Fasusi's the guy. The Coleman guys are very athletic. They're big guys. I'm not sure if they're twin brothers. I think they're twins. They got to be twins. But they have a younger brother too that's also in the mix. So it's a little strange trying to track the three of them. They're big guys, but again, they're guards. This is why OU didn't offer them. They're both guards. They're 6'4", 6'3", 330, 340. They're just massive guys, very athletic.
Yeah.
I'm one of them, I think, actually could play D tackle for Texas in their scheme, how they need big bodies. So that's the big O-line recap. And
that's a great update on O-line recruiting, man.
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. Lots of great insight there. Lots of inside news and everything.
Yeah, y'all want to switch
broke
gears?
That down.
Sure. Gears. Move to another group.
We want to talk wide receivers?
Yeah.
Has anybody recruited better than Emmett Jones the last 2 years? On OU staff, I should say.
Nationally, the only guy I think is doing a better job at wide receiver coach is Brian Hartline at Ohio State.
Sure.
Yeah. And that's the gold. Yeah. That's the gold standard. He just walks into 5-star wide receivers and says, I think he's pay me money to come to Ohio State. But other than Hartline on the OU staff, he's obviously other than the combo of Brandon Hall and Jay Valai.
Sure.
If you want to take secondary as a combo group, it's Brandon Hall, Jay Valai versus Emmett Jones, and it's like a Thunderdome match. I could come out of that anytime, convinced one way or the other. If Brandon Hall pulls into Marion Robinson, that matchup becomes even tighter.
Right.
But yeah, the two wide receiver verbals are fascinating from different perspectives. Because first, Marcus Harris was not someone OU was recruiting. I do
let's go into Marcus.
Yeah, I do class predictions every month. I need to get one in tomorrow. And for the last 6 months, I've not had Marcus Harris as anybody else predicted. He was supposed to be going to either maybe UCLA, USC, or Texas. UGA was recruiting him, and then UGA wide receiver recruiting is always a little strange because they fell off Zion Reagans to focus on other guys who they didn't get. Then they tried to come back on Zion Reagans last year, and Zion's like, well, I don't think he said this, but screw you guys, screw you guys. I'm going to owe you the people who really want me. And I think UGA maybe did the same thing with Marcus Harris. You see this play. I mean, that's an amazing catch. He doesn't have Zion Reagan's Brendan Thompson speed, but he has really good speed. Obviously, this is Mater Day that he plays at, so his schedule is incredible. He's playing Juna Pacero, Bosco, Bishop Gorman, IMG. He's Servite. You watch that. I mean, even when he's covered, he's not really covered in these highlights, and
he's got great body control, and he's high holding that ball real good.
You just watch this. He's finding holes in coverage. He's got excellent hands. He makes difficult catches.
Makes people look stupid.
So OU basically went from nowhere with him to he's visiting OU to 3 days later, Emmett Jones has him verbally committing. And he was a top 100 guy at one point. He's now in the top 200 range because the wide receiver group in high schools these days is just kind of ridiculous. And he's not 6'4", 200 pounds and runs like a 4.40, right? He's not like Carson Cunningham or Jamie French, 2 5-star guys, just who are bigger frame guys.
Yeah.
He's 6 foot, 6'1", 185, something like that. But when his catch here, his body control.
OU's had some very good success with wide receivers that are 6 foot, 6'1". You go Ryan Broyles and Sterling Shepard. They were never like the guys that were like the 6'3", 6'4" guys. They're usually these guys that are. Go ahead.
Yeah, previously, big receivers failed at OU before Emmett Jones arrived, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
OU was like the graveyard for big receivers. But if you were D.D. Westbrook, Sterling Shepard, Kenny Stills, Brian Broyles,
young C.D. Lamb didn't have a very big frame.
No. So I watched this film, and I rewatched the fourth quarter of the Tennessee OU game in Knoxville the other day, and you just forget how. If you haven't watched it in a while, go watch it. You can find it on YouTube with no huddle version. You just watch Sterling Shepard take over that game, and I watched this film, and I'm like, this is very, knowing how good this competition is. This film is very Sterling Shepard like just big play after big play. Even when he's covered, he's not covered. His ball skills are elite. He's comfortable playing outside in the slot. And then you think about this, good basically, stand. That's a touchdown if that ball's anywhere close to out in front of him. I'm like pointing at the screen like you guys want to talk. That's a touchdown if the guy could have led him any degree. He comes back, I think to open up a door at Major Day, because, that's huge too. I mean, OU has more Major Day verbal commitments than USC right now.
Riley.
For OU,
so bad.
For OU in the space of about 8 days to add, and he's just
they added Harris and O'Neal from
and
Cali.
O'Neal.
That was great. Yeah,
I mean, it's just he's smooth. I mean, is he massive? No. Is he gonna run over you? No. Is he? But on 3rd and 5, this kid's getting you 6 yards. When you've got to have it. When you've got to have it, that's what this kid looks like, right? When you've got to have 5-6 yards,
absolutely,
he's going to get you that.
There you go.
Drake Stoops did a lot with his measurables. You know what I mean? So,
but I think this kid is legitimately 6 foot 185, and probably is like a 4 or 5 40 kind of kid. So he's not slow. He's not tiny.
That's not slow.
He's not toe. He's not slimy. It's just, he's just. I was stunned when I looked at his film, because I hadn't watched his film in forever, because he wasn't listing OU. OU is like OU did not make his top 5 list, but he verbally committed to them last one weekend. It's like basically some schools dropped the ball and lost interest in him, and Emmett Jones said, "Why don't you just come to Norman?" He's like, "Okay, I'll come to Norman." And he's like,
That's a great recruiter right there, man. That is elite recruitment. I mean, you can't get any better than that.
So just to make things confusing, he's Harris. I know you also has Grayson Harris in the class. And they also have Elijah Thomas from Chakotah. So this is the 3rd wide receiver in the group. And Elijah Thomas may be a little bigger than I think than Marcus Harris, but he's not a huge guy. And I love Elijah Thomas. I think he's completely underranked. I think if he was somewhere else, he'd probably be close to like a top 75, top 50 kid of the nation. That guy plays all over the field, both ways for Chakotah, and it's just amazing. So if you haven't watched his film in a while, go back and watch it. His film's something else. But that's 3 wide receivers. So Emmett Jones has got a good 3 wide receiver class. You're like, okay, that's good. And then the Barbecue U weekend rolls around, and he picks up wide receiver number 4.
Yep.
Manny. And Manny Choice is that 6'4", 6'5", 200-pound guy.
When he committed, Brad and I were actually in the middle of a podcast, and he committed, and we were taking a look at him, and I was like, "My gosh, that is a tall receiver! Look at that! He's got to be at least 6'3", 6'4".
Yeah, I think he's closer to 6'5".
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think.
Wow.
Based upon the photos at the Barbecue U weekend and all that, and watching him in his, just seeing him in his jersey, his uniform and all that, he might be close. I mean, you never know with the OU measurements sometimes, but
right.
He may be. I mean, look at that slugger right there. I mean, that's just kind of embarrassing. The thing I noticed from his footage is he's a big receiver, and you see him doing kind of the typical big receiver stuff here, right? Floating in the end zone,
over the top,
high pointing the ball. But as you watch these highlights, you'll see him do some of the work, which I would call small wide receiver stuff, like that slant there. And then boom, he walked,
arm tackle him. That's good.
And there's another 10 yards. He does some small wide receiver stuff as well. I mean, he's got good speed. Again, if that ball's laid out in front, he's walking in the end zone. But this is this is what I expected to see. Just highlights of that, repeating of that, jump ball passes, fade routes, and all that. But he does a lot of small wide receiver stuff. And the last thing is he is an excellent blocker. He's very physical, very willing to bury a DB out on the edge. I mean,
yeah, that was my favorite part of the film.
Yep.
We were taking a look. I was like, oh my! I mean, I think there's a play in here. It's play away.
it's coming
he's like
up.
20 yards. He's 20
Yeah.
yards away. He's burying a kid,
And he pancakes the DB. I mean, he's just. I mean,
I love it.
I
love it.
Here it is. I think this is the play.
Is this it? Yeah, this is it.
Yeah. He's out here. Bam.
It's just like,
Nice.
oh, that's awesome.
So
I would have offered the kid based on that one highlight. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's my receiver right there.
But you see that play right there. I mean, he's sometimes, in the past I've watched OU big receivers, like, guy's a little mechanical. I was a little worried about that with Ivan Carry-On from his junior film. And his senior year film was much better. He looked like he'd grown in his body. He was more fluid. He was making more plays after catching the pass. But with this guy, it's hard for me not to go with a Nick Anderson comp. He looks very Nick Anderson-ish.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
that's
a big pickup. He's a 4-star by one service, high 3 by a couple of other services. It's hard to make up rankings with the wide receiver group being just so talented.
So deep.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's so deep. I mean, we see the offshoot of this in the portal, right? The portal's just littered with 1,000-yard receivers, right? It's just like So this is the 4th receiver. So the interesting question is, I didn't ask you to grab his film, but since I sent you that note, Rob, Cortez Mills has had like a half dozen OU forecasts.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
Yep. So Cortez Mills is 6'1", 175 from Florida.
Yeah.
And I think the Miami area. I think I have that right.
Homestead, Florida.
Yeah, I think that's Miami. I think basically, if you could,
it is.
if you just like Mesquite's Dallas, right?
Right.
From that perspective, or Atlanta. I live in Atlanta, or Alpharetta's Atlanta. It's not really Atlanta. It's 20 miles away from me in Atlanta. But so he's from Florida. He was seemed to be Clemson. Then he came for an unofficial visit for, I believe, the spring game, or maybe one of the junior days OU was having in the April timeframe. And then OU scheduled him for an official visit. I don't think anybody really thought much of anything was going to happen with it. Then he came for that official visit weekend with Marcus Harris. They buddied up, and OU nailed that visit weekend and appeared to erase
Emmett Jones. I mean,
and then appeared to erase any lead Clemson had. And when you think about it, if a guy's really attracted to Clemson, unless he's from like South Carolina, which his kid's not, OU is selling a very similar package.
Nice.
With much better wide receiver history and wide receiver play lately. I mean, Clemson. Yes. The last 3 years, the Clemson wide receiver room has been up.
That whole offense has tanked since Trevor Lawrence and all of his, that national championship run left. They lost their OCs and everything. So that offense is just so bland. It is just not. It's bland. It is not explosive at all. And
I watched it.
Kid and be like, we got JFA. We've got an O-line coach that's gonna, make sure our O-line's great, and then we're gonna have you got this Emmett Jones, and we're gonna be throwing vertical in this offense. This is gonna be a wide receiver dream.
So he's somewhere in between. It's sort of like to use a kind of a weird example. This is like the Goldilocks situation, right? Like, so you've got to So you've got Grayson Harris, who's right here, and then you've got Marcus Harris, who's right here, and then you've got Elijah Thomas is here. He fits in between Marcus Harris and Elijah Thomas, I think. And then you've got Choice is the big guy over here. Or if you're building a basketball team, he's a shooting guard. He's a shooting guard.
Right.
Wide receiver group, you want multiple different guys of multiple different sizes that can run multiple different routes. You don't want the same body type. You don't want the same route tree. You want to be able to do multiple different things, like Zion Raggins. I know from last cycle. I mean, small 5'7" guy, but he can fit into a class and give you some jet sweeps, some orbit motions, do a lot of that quick game stuff. And you come back in this class and you start getting your 6'1" guys, your tall guys to go and run your red zone packages and stuff. I mean, that wide receiver group needs to be like, want to be able to go into a toolbox and be like, okay, this the defense is throwing at us. Here's the route trees we need. Here, we want to go tall, we go big, we want to go small, But
yeah, so Cortez Mills fits in that. He's actually the highest rated. If he was to commit to OU, he'd be the highest rated of the guys. He's around 63 in the nation, according to On3. So it would be a big pickup. Can OU afford 5 wide receivers? I don't know how that all shakes out. But Cortez Mills appears to be on Monday, and we could talk about that just real quick. July 1st is when he's supposed to commit. OU has 3 targets committing on July 1st. Wow. And Cortez Mills, right now, national recruiting guys are picking him, and so are some Oklahoma guys. So could he change his mind Sunday night and flip back to Clemson? Clemson obviously will be selling. Hey, you're our number 1 guy. OU's got like 4 of them, so maybe that weighs on him. But it looks like OU looks like Emmett Jones is just sort of like, I don't know, saying like, hey, here guys, hold my beer. I'm going to go get another top 100 wide receiver.
I know.
I only have 2 of them. So I want to add another one.
Right.
It's like it's kind of crazy. It sometimes shows when you give an elite recruiter the OU brand to sell. Mm-hmm. The top end of what they can do is
he was at Tech. He was at Tech in Kansas, so it was a huge upgrade for him to come here and sell the brand. Just what you said. Yeah,
it's funny because the Lancaster Emmanuel Choice is from Lancaster. That's really the first sort of big Texas high school that you expected Emmett Jones with his experience at South Oak Cliff and all around Texas, Dallas high schools and big Texas high school programs. You kind of thought that's where he would live, but Manny Choice is really the first wide receiver from one of those programs that he could pull in. If they keep all 5 of these guys, you've got 2 in-state kids. You've got one in-state kid. You've got 1 kid from California, 1 kid from Florida, and then
2 different coasts.
And then 2 kids from Texas. So he's really doing a great job. The other 2 guys verbaling on July 1st are Mark Ahenachor. He's from California. He's 6'3", 220. He's a Mike linebacker all the way. I use the phrase because in his highlights he plays running back for his school as well. So, but he's a linebacker, and I use the phrase: if running backs are nails, Mark Ahenachor is the hammer, because in his highlights he obliterates running backs in the hole. They go nowhere. He just stones everybody. But he's a Mike only. He doesn't really. There's not a lot of footage of him in coverage. Not a lot of footage of him sort of doing some of the other things that Brent Venables requires. He's a thumper. He's a thumper. He's an athletic thumper, but he is a he's a
downhill thumper.
So if you think Marcus James is your Mike linebacker in the class, and I don't know where Marcus James is going to go, because he at the barbecue he looked 6'4", 220-ish. So he could really go any number of directions, and he's still got a lean body frame. And at the OU summer camp session, I saw him. He still looks super lean, but he's big. I mean, he looks 6'4". I mean, it's like, where could this go? I don't know. So if you
tweener,
maybe
like a tweener, maybe kick him outside. 6'4". I mean, you could be a 6'4" Mike. I mean, you can be a 6'4" Mike or a Will
Cheetah.
It's just that.
Don't forget about Cheetah.
But OU needs a second linebacker in this class. So if Marcus James is going to be your Mike, I'm not sure Ahenachor is really a Will if OU's still using Mike and Will. But Christian Jones from Nebraska, who visited for the barbecue weekend, who's 6'3", 215, much more athletic. His film highlights show him much more in coverage, out on the perimeter, sideline to sideline kind of work. So it's down to SMU and OU, and I'm just not sure if OU's going to go all in for Ahenachor and decide whether maybe they'll sit on the sidelines and see if they can see if they can find another linebacker who fits the will mode a little bit better.
Yeah.
The other guy I think is a take all the way. That's Smith Orogbo, the defensive end from the Houston area, I believe from Alif Hastings. His rankings are a little bit all over the place. On3 has him in the top 40 in the nation.
Wow.
They do it. And he's 6'6", 225, 220. Explosive. He's got that twitch. Part of me says, can you ever have too many 6'6",
No,
long wingspan, twitchy guys that become
No.
pass rushers? And the answer is that no, you can't.
absolutely not.
So
you need to stack them. Stack
so
them like
it's-
chips, man.
So if OU had gotten Max Granville, I think they might have been tight and not have a spot for him after they got CJ Nixon. But with no Granville, I think OU should be all out for Orogbo. Now, Texas also needs him badly. And as I just mentioned, Texas has been taking some recruiting hits over the last day or two. Lost a big defensive tackle who would be kind of a natural replacement for the guys they lost. And Josh Shermer from California, 6'4", 320. And they lost Myron.
Is Texas Tech involved on his recruiting too?
Well, Texas Tech had a great visit with him in early June, and everyone's like, he's going to Texas Tech. And then he visited OU in Texas, and Tech has fallen off. Okay. So this looks like – so it's been a while since we've had a real knockout, drag-out OU Texas recruiting battles.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a while. If you think about last year, maybe the only guy that fit that was maybe Jaden Jackson. Really? OU beat Ohio State and Texas and Miami for Jaden Jackson. But this year you've got Fasusi, which is going to be just a, if OU gets Fasusi, it's going to be popcorn time, sit on X and watch the meltdown occur. Because Texas fans are not going to handle that. They're already they're already freaking out. If OU was to pull off a Orogbo, Texas fans are going to have a mini. So the Fasusi meltdown is like a 10 out of 10. Maybe it's the spinal tap. It goes to 11 meltdown. But with to use an old reference, but Orogbo will be like a 7.5 or 8 because because he fits their scheme. Two huge defensive tackles in the middle, right, and then 2 fast edge rushers flanking them, right. That's sort of the heart of the Texas scheme, and Kwiatkowski's scheme at Washington. And last year, that's what Texas had, and it worked. We'll see if it can work this year without the 2 NFL defensive tackles in the middle. I think everyone and the linebacker behind him, Jalen Ford. So, but Orogbo does fit Texas's scheme. He's perfect for what OU wants to do, because you could literally have him on one flank, and then you could allow Nixon to do some stand-up stuff on the other side. A pair of 6'5", 6'6", 250-pound pass rushers, all twitched up, super athletes. If you could add that to what OU already has, when we're talking about stacking talent and the great job Jay Valai and Brandon Hall have been doing in the secondary, you got to give Miguel Chavis, props, because right now OU in the last 3 classes, you're just talking about top 100 defensive ends. You've got PJ, Danny Okoye, CJ Nixon, Zane Rowe in 2027. They've got a half dozen guys they're looking at 2026.
Yeah.
And if they got Orogbo, you'd have 2, and obviously I'm not counting guys like, Taylor Wine, Wyatt Gilmore, guys that, obviously have potential to help OU greatly. I'm just talking like top 100 recruits. But if you can add an elite pass rusher every class, that's how you build that Clemson defensive line, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Just got to develop them once they're on. That's been kind of the knack a little bit here lately,
Yeah, I mean,
Davis. So.
Yep, I mean, obviously RMT was hurt last year. He hurt both ankles. He had like a double bad ankle sprain, which just killed his season. And I'm not sure most folks realize that PJ had like a bad turf toe in the Under Armour game coming out of high school. And then he sort of re-injured that over the summer. So he's most of last year, he was sort of working not being able to go, all out because he was working on his, his foot wasn't allowed. He wasn't feeling very confident in it. I think obviously he's past all that now, and we're hearing some rumblings that our Mason Thomas had a pretty good bowl game. If you go back and look, he was providing an edge rush, and if he's healthy, and then if you have PJ starting to come on board, but yeah, Chavis needs to prove some things, I think, as a position coach a little bit. Yeah,
and if his group is healthy and go into this season, I think the edge group is going to surprise some people. PJ, he's a young guy. Brad and I, we were not caught up into the whole what's going on with Pete. We're just like, we'll just wait. I mean, he just needs a little bit. He just needs to develop his body. He needs to mature a little bit, and then he's gonna tear it up. So we're excited to see what that edge group looks like this coming season.
So I guess maybe to wrap up, the only other guy to talk about is kind of maybe burying the lead a little bit, but Jaden O'Neal verbaled last Monday.
Oh yeah,
and he's right now at the Rivals. I think the Under Armour Top 50 underclassmen competition, and they just posted who was the most top 10 guys there, regardless of position.
I saw that.
And Jaden O'Neal was number 3. And that's
awesome.
And that's loaded with 5-star quarterbacks. There's only one quarterback ranked ahead of him. I was like raving over this guy like back in March. As soon as I saw OU offered him, I was just like, well, this is the guy we need to get. And then Deron Coleman kind of visited OU, was like, hey, I want to be the OU quarterback. I want to be the OU quarterback. And everyone was like, well, why haven't we taken Deron Coleman's verbal? I'm like, well, because Jaden, they want to, they're trying to get Jaden O'Neal on campus and see where he is. I mean, so my phrase for him is he throws the most consistent, prettiest, accurate deep ball that I've seen in a long time. I mean, watch this pass right here.
Perfect.
Oof. Yeah.
And he's not. And his motion is so smooth. He's like a pitcher with great mechanics, where sometimes they say, the ball just flies out of his hand. It's a smooth motion. That's what I see with him.
Yeah, we were watching these wide receivers first, and we were watching their quarterbacks throw short, or they're throwing a little bit behind.
I mean, just look at that. He resets, steps up, and just drops a dime.
And now this guy, he's hitting him in stride.
Yeah, he does good. He has good functional mobility. I think he's a little bit. I mean, he's a bigger guy than Caleb Williams. He's 6'3", 210, 215 already.
Oh, wow.
So he could be 6'4", 225, 230 in college easily. So he's a bigger guy than Caleb Williams. But he has a little bit of that poise and playmaking that Caleb has. Body size-wise, I compare him a little bit to Deshaun Foster.
There was a drop.
Sorry, Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson. Because when Deshaun at Clemson was that bigger type, he was about 6'3", 6'4", 220, 225. You see him just move in the pocket. That's what I love, right? That he's
look this right here, man. That is a pass, man. I mean,
and you see he's resetting. And he's resetting in the pocket to do that, right? That's some pressure.
And he dropped it right there in the back of the end zone, where only this guy can get it. That was a good. And
he's
pass.
he's a high school sophomore. I mean, this is,
this is a sophomore. Is this a 2027 kid?
Well, this is his sophomore film.
Oh, sophomore film. Okay, got it. Sorry.
Yeah, this is his sophomore
film.
No, he's not 27. No, the 27 kid, Peyton Houston. I mean, that guy's got some game too. But this kid, obviously, this is his sophomore film. That's
yeah. Sorry.
So
I was like, what? But this is
I showed this to one of my 360 friends, Caleb Cummings, and he's just like, that's sophomore film. I'm like, yeah. He's like, that kid's a sophomore. I'm like, yeah, he's a sophomore.
Back up there, Rob. It looked like he was throwing off his back foot on that one. He wasn't even set yet. Just tossed it out there.
Yeah, he throws from different platforms. He's comfortable throwing on the move. And again, this is based upon some of the podcasts that came out from folks who were at the OU summer camp. He showed up at the OU summer camp, and it was just like everyone's like, "Wow, man, this guy!" It's like
he got set.
it's like Zeus showed up, right, throwing thunderbolts, and everybody's just standing watching him, and just like
like what in the world?
I mean, he's throwing next to Kevin Sperry, and you're like, he's got more juice on his arm than Kevin, and Kevin's an Elite 11, top 15 quarterback in the country, and a year older than him. Now his mobility he's
gotta
not
have some run game.
He has a little run game. But he seems vast. He seems critically aware that I don't need to be taking hits when I'm running the ball. Like, there's a down marker. That's my target. The end zone isn't necessarily it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just I'm going to run out of bounds, live to fight another day, move the chains, which is always I always think that's the most demoralizing thing for a defense, right? You do everything right, like you cover, you do everything, the pocket collapses, and the guy runs 10 yards for a first down, and you're like, crap, we did everything right, and the guy still makes plays.
Did his offense or his high school ask him to run any quarterback run game, like counter or anything, counter, power, sweep?
I've not seen any of that.
No,
I don't think so. No, I mean,
I was just curious.
I think they have him.
I mean, he definitely looks athletic to do any of it. I was just curious if they were asking him to do it.
I would protect him and not have him do any of that. Like I got running backs, right? But just his escapability is, and this is kind of the play here, right? Like you've done everything right, you've blitzed, and he just burns you. He burns you for a 13-yard run. And he throws on the run really well. Look at this pass. He's just flicks that out there to that guy.
Mm-hmm.
You had done, you got pressure on him. You did what you're supposed to do. You covered guys, and then he just does that. So
biggest guy, looks like OU's recruited in a while at that position for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
at least out of high school. So
yeah, I mean, he's the ESPN has him as the number 3 quarterback in the country. On 3 has him at number 9. That probably will change after this Under Armour event. And basically, he's been throwing around the country. I mean, he basically went on a tour to just prove that I'm Godzilla. I'm the biggest, baddest thrower on the country. I mean, he went to FSU, Ohio State, Tennessee. I mean, he went all these places to just went to I saw this on Twitter. I'm not sure this story is true. So apparently a Texas site said that he threw at Texas, but he was wearing OU gear. So they kind of got mad at him and sort of didn't invite him to their pool party, and he just kind of left like,
wow,
because Texas has a highly rated quarterback in their 26 class already. His name's Dia Bell. His dad was a former NBA player called Raja Bell. Him and O'Neal are probably going to fight for 5-star status. So Texas didn't need him, but he just went to Texas just to prove that he could, throw the ball there. But it was so clear that he was going to Oklahoma that Michigan basically took a verbal commitment from somebody else and told him not to show up at their camp. Like, yeah, we love you, but we've already taken somebody else, and we're happy with that. Yeah, and actually, the guy that they took is the number 1 guy there, Brady Hart. So, but if you look at that, Faison Brandon at number 8 is the universal number 1 ranked quarterback in the country right now, and obviously Jaden just outplayed him at this Under Armour event for whatever that's worth. But the Kendry Harrison kid is 6'7", 250 tight end, and plays basketball. He's pretty much the second coming of Julius Peppers in terms of basketball, football kind of talent wise.
Yeah.
Well, it's always good to see OU on a top 10 list.
Yeah. Are we in on any of these other guys? Just
no, because I don't know the linebacker. The wide receivers OU are after would be Mason James from Norman.
Mm-hmm.
Probably that is obviously some Dallas guys that they just offered from the camp session. That they're probably serious that they're after. So I don't think so. But wide receiver recruiting for 26 hasn't really come together, other than the fact that Mason James in Norman looks incredible. Is probably going to be a top 100 guy, and OU's obviously all in on him. And it's hard to look at him and not come up with like a Broyles or Shepard, comp as well. He's fantastic. And there's some other wide receivers. There's a wide receiver called Bobby Feaster. I think his nickname is Booby Feaster. He was at the Rivals event, and he was getting rave reviews there. He might be a 26 guy to think about, but I hate to say, I'm not really worried about 26 wide receiver recruiting, as long as Emmett Jones is on staff. So,
yeah, for sure.
I mean, that's not really something I really worry about that much. But they offered a couple of kids at the camp sessions. There's a big tight end, H-back wide receiver from Duncanville called Zach Turner, who dominated the OU summer camps. He's just a big looking athlete. So if he decides to I think he probably, if you're familiar with Jaden Greathouse at Notre Dame?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He was sort of fit that mold too. OU kind of made a mistake not offering him. He's a big receiver. If a Notre Dame quarterback can ever get him the ball, he's gonna eat at wide receiver quite a bit. I think Zach Turner reminds me a little bit of him, that he could, he's 6'2". He's just not going to be able to do anything. So, he won't be a tight end, but he'd be like I think he should just settle in at big receiver. But there's lots of guys I think that'll show up for 26 wide receiver.
Yeah.
Yeah, you always got to get the local guys. Mason James out of Norman, and I know here recently the legacy guy, Caden Jones, Keywon Jones' son.
Yeah, he's a running back. He's a running back for you.
Yep. So
and Jonathan Hutton is a unbelievable running back. He could be a 5-star running back. So,
oh wow,
you could have a 5-star running back and quarterback in the same class for OU. And I believe the last time that happened was Rhett Bomar and Adrian Peterson.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go back to. Yeah.
So, which worked out great one way, not
sure
so great
did.
the other way.
That's
right.
Last Hall of Fame NFL running back probably, and then a guy who got thrown out of OU after his freshman year. So, but
that kind of stuff's legal now, though. So.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been a problem now. Yeah, he wouldn't even have to lie to Bob about it. He said, "Yeah, of course I did this. It's legal." Oh yeah, you're right. Get out of my office. But yeah, so
all right. Well,
that's a lot of stuff for you guys. So
yeah, thank you. This is awesome. Yeah, that was a really great breakdown, Chris. Like that was a lot of detail. We really appreciate that. We learned a lot, man. You tore through all of that. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I always try to keep an amateur list going of guys, and you make me feel a little bit better about that, But I'm depending on you guys. I go out there looking for the expert predictions to add to my list. I'm not doing all the legwork and all that stuff like you guys are. So
the only name I did not mention that folks need to pay attention to, and it's the last one I'll give you guys, is Floyd Boucard, the defensive tackle from Miami. He's originally from Canada. He's sort of an exchange student playing football down in Miami. It's probably USC, Miami, and OU for him. He's 6'4", 295, or at least he was when I talked to him. And he told me he was running sub 5.0 40s consistently. His film is fantastic. He's way underrated. He's probably with the loss of Cole Brewer from New Jersey to Stanford and Christian Evans from Virginia to Virginia Tech.
Yep.
Floyd's become real important. He's a big part because Kamori Moore is a nose guard. He's really good. He'll be a good nose guard. Trent Wilson is a fantastic 3 technique. He's going to be a big time guy for OU, top 100 guy. He's 6'3", 285 already, and he's just grease. He's like he's twitchy fast off the line.
Nice.
But they need an every down, real big defensive tackle to kind of be the guy who could play either position, and that mix. And Boucard's that guy.
Gotcha. Yeah. And Cade's more than likely coming to OU, it sounds like, from everything we're hearing too. So he's kind of in that mix too as well.
Yeah, because when you see him, he's already 6'5", 260, according to folks. And he looks but he's real lean. I think I'm watching his high school film. If you guys go back and look at his film, he's making a lot more plays inside than outside from an inside position. I think he could be an elite 3 tech, 6'5", 285, 290, long reach, just a handful for guards because they can't get their hands on him because he's got a long reach and he's too quick for them. So
good.
I think that's where his position could be, but he also could be a big defensive end and some 3-4 looks as well, depending upon how you want to use him.
All right, Chris. Yeah, no, we really appreciate you coming on. We're amateur podcasters. We started this a few months ago, and so we just love to get guests on, and we're trying to build our platform, the best that we can. But yeah, everyone just follow Chris. You can see down there Sooner 360, Sooners 360. Sorry, you got the plural in there. But anything else, Chris? You want to add as we kind of wrap things up here?
No, I think if there's a downside to anything that's gone on lately, I would say tight end recruiting is looking like it's not having a great year. Trinae Washington is, I think, bigger than most folks anticipated. So I think he could be a really good flexed out tight end, and kind of my colleague uses Evan Ingram as maybe an example, 6'4", 225, 230, matchup problem, but he's not the big tight end I think OU would have liked to have added in this class. Dasan Brom went to chose Oregon. Nate Roberts is going to Ohio State. And Lincoln Cure is probably choosing Kansas State. That was probably never a battle OU was going to win. So that's and they didn't offer some other folks that they probably. I don't quite understand. I don't understand what they're doing tight end recruiting. It was clear they were behind. It was clear Nate Roberts was probably going to Ohio State, and OU didn't offer anyone else, and we're clearly behind on Lincoln Cure and Dasan Brom. When recruiting guys can tell you you're not having, when the recruiting services tell you have no shot, I don't understand why why there has not been a bigger push to get some different guys on campus and to make some offers and to make a little bit more make some movement there. Obviously, they picked up Ryder Mix for 2026 from the summer camps, and he's a really good looking tight end. If you've not watched his film, his sophomore film is really good. He's a good two-way tight end, but I'm not really sure what they were doing tight end wise.
I'm puzzled with that whole room. That whole room is puzzling, and last year even the tight end, production on the field and everything was just sort of puzzling. So, I got some improvements there for sure.
Yeah, I would love it's Bauer Sharp, and I'd love to. The stuff he's been posting on social media seems to indicate we might actually see Caden Helms in a football jersey and a football uniform out on the field. He's cut, and he's had some bad knee injuries. He's cutting. He looks good. He's got a big frame now. He's 6'6", 240. So I don't know. Maybe something appears there, but OU needs to sign a big tight end, a two-way tight end every class, and they're not getting one this class. So I don't quite understand it. So
yeah. Well, everyone, go check out Chris Mason at Sooners 360 on Patreon, and he's going to have some updates here, here in a couple of days, right, Chris, with all these commitments and stuff here on July 1st. So go check him out, and thanks for coming on, man. It was a lot of fun.
No problem.
A lot. We need to have you on every 3 months to come in here and just say Brad and I.
Well, everything I just said 4 weeks from now will be they'll have me on again in 4 more weeks, and we can dig deeper into what's gone on and see where we are, because if OU starts missing on some of these guys that are going to make their decisions coming up, they're going to have to start veering some other directions.
Basically, reset their board. We're gonna have to reset their board and
start thinking about who might be then. And again, the 26 class is about to, as Brad was saying, it's 12 months a year. 2026 is about to blow up at the end of this month. OU is probably going to have 25 to 30 blue chips on campus for their 26th event.
Well, thanks again, man. You take care, and we'll stay in touch, man.
Yep.
We'll have you again on soon for sure.
Thanks so much for having me on, guys, and appreciate me talking your ear off for 90 minutes about recruiting.
Oh, that's great, man. We loved it. Appreciate it.
All right, guys. Thanks.
All right.
Later, man.
Take care. Hey, that was nice having Chris Mason on. Recover a little recruiting.
Yeah, it was fun.
We dived into that pretty good. He had some good insight there. I know we didn't get into everybody, and
Yeah.
we had Afalava. That's the last time I'm saying that today, so I don't have to say it again.
Don't
He
ask me to
committed.
say it.
he committed yesterday, but we got 1, 2, 3, 4 guys, I think, that are potentially making their announcement here in the next week. So,
Yeah.
they're not all going to pick OU, of course, but
No.
we'll probably add another 1 or 2 here in the next week, and it just kind of keeps on rolling. There's other guys sitting out there too, and Chris mentioned the 2026 class will really start taking shape after our camp that we have at the end of the July. I forget what it's called. I forgot the name of it, but it's for all the 26, 27 guys.
Yeah.
Something like
And we'll have
Rising
Chris come
Stars or
back
something like
on
that.
and
But
yeah, Stars at the Palace, I think.
Yep.
Stars at the Palace? Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we'll have Chris come back on here in a few weeks, and he can that's the kind of guy you just let him rip. I mean, he's got so much to talk about. He's got so much detail, and that was a lot of fun, man. I felt like I just got like this blitzkrieg of recruiting that I've missed for the last 6 months. I'm gonna have to come, when I edit this episode, I'm gonna have to watch it like 2 or 3 times just so I can remember everything that was said.
Yeah. There's so many names, and it's ever evolving, and there's so many guys, that they're recruiting at one time, all the way up.
Yeah.
Now that we're in 2027,
Yeah.
recruiting guys, and I can't remember the last time we're getting out that far out in front of our skis like that, like we are now. So it's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, you want to wrap it up here? I think good podcast, good recruiting podcast.
That was fun.
Yeah. Please like, subscribe, follow us. You can see everything down here. championstandard.com, TikTok, X, all of it. Just follow us, subscribe. We'd love to hear from you.
Boomer.
Sooner.